Hey, lovelies. What's happening? It's story time with Dottie. And I apologize that I didn't do this last night. I did not sleep good Tuesday, so I was just super not having it, way wiped out yesterday. So I took the night off, and so here we are. Here we are tonight on Thursday. So we're going to be finishing our book, Prince Caspian, another book coming to an end. And give me just 1 second. Okay, so how's everybody doing? Barbara, hello. You haven't been here for a couple weeks. We've been asking about you. And I mean, I am a space head, and I could have texted you and found out exactly where you were, and I just didn't. So I hope you're doing well. Hope everyone is doing awesome. I'm excited to be here. So hello to Kirk, and thank you for saying that I look so pretty. I had an interview today, so I actually got makeup on and put on a real shirt and wow, it's crazy. Yeah. Because my job ended on the 1st and I should have done more this week, but I just didn't. But I'm like, oh yeah, I need to wear something other than jammies and whatever. But anyway, hello. Zulu one, yeah, you're first, of course. Even if you're last, you're still first. So way to go. Sue Finelli, team leader, legend, tiny, amazing human. And yeah, that's it so far. So, how's everybody doing? How's this Thursday treating you? Yeah, I don't know. Not much happening on my end. Yeah, had an interview today and I did not get the job because I can't work the schedule that they need me to work, which is fine. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, Flattoberfest is coming up in, what is it? Is it like 15 days? Is that it? Is that it? Is it 15 days? Let me see. I can't remember. I think it's 15. 15 or 16. 7, 14, 15, 16 days. Yeah, 16 days. Sorry, I got a text. One moment. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's even less time for me because I'm going to be arriving on the Monday before Flattoberfest, and I'm going to stay with Bob and Cammy for a couple days, and Zach is still with them, and I am super excited. So I will be in town before pretty much everyone else, and I can't wait. I still don't have my plane ticket, but I should be getting it this weekend. Should be happening. So very excited. I'm very excited. Yeah. And if you're unaware, Flattoberfest, it's going to be October 23rd and 24th in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And yeah, 2-day event of presenters and music and good stuff. And I just can't even wait to see everybody because it feels like it's been years since Solar Return. And it's only been like 7 months. And it feels like it has been literally forever. So I'm just so excited to see my people and get so many hugs and just not have to feel like I have to explain myself to people who don't understand. And yeah, I just get to see so many smiles. Nobody's going to be wearing a mask. It's going to be so awesome. I can't even wait. Oh, it's going to be so fun. So, and then I will most likely be staying until the following week. And yeah, so I'm going to stay like a week and a couple days, I think, in South Carolina. And I can't even wait. South Carolina is the place that I just feel like that's like my soul's home. I feel so at home there. And maybe it's just because when I go to South Carolina, it's to these kinds of things. And so I get to see my people. And so maybe that's what makes it feel so much like home. But, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So excited. I can't even wait. So, yeah, should we get into it? Finish our story? Are we ready to finish Prince Caspian? You get a bonus chapter tonight. We're doing 3 chapters instead of just 2. So, lucky you. And then next week we get to start my most favorite book in the series. Oh, I can't even wait. I can't even wait. I'm so excited for it. I'm having a really good day. Even though I didn't get that job, it's all good. Like, stuff is going to work out. It's going to work out how it's supposed to. And yeah, it's going to be awesome, whatever it is. So there we go. I just want it to sit right there, like on that side. Yeah, let's do this, okay? Let's do it. Let's get right into it. We're going to do this. Chapter 13, The High King in Command. Now, said Peter as they finished their meal, Aslan and the girls, that's Queen Susan and Queen Lucy, Caspian, are somewhere close. We don't know when he will act. In his time, no doubt, not ours. In the meantime, he would like us to do what we can on our own. You say, Caspian, we are not strong enough to meet Miraz in pitched battle. I'm afraid not, High King, said Caspian. He was liking Peter very much, but was rather tongue-tied. It was much stranger for him to meet the great kings out of the old stories than it was for them to meet him. Very well, then, said Peter. I'll send him a challenge to single combat. Please don't tell me I'm getting the hiccups. That would be... the hiccups, they're so fun. I hope I'm not getting them. No one had thought of this before. Please, said Caspian, could it not be me? I want to avenge my father. You're wounded, said Peter. And anyway, wouldn't he just laugh at a challenge from you? I mean, we have seen that you are a king and a warrior, but he thinks of you as a kid. But, sire, said the badger, who sat very close to Peter and never took his eyes off him, will he accept a challenge even from you? He knows he has the stronger army. Very likely he won't, said Peter, but there's always the chance. And even if he doesn't, we should spend the best part of the day sending heralds to and fro and all that. By then, Aslan may have done something, and at least I can inspect the army and strengthen the position. I will send the challenge. In fact, I will write it at once. Have you a pen and ink, Master Doctor? A scholar is never without them, Your Majesty, answered Dr. Cornelius. Very well, I will dictate, said Peter. And while the doctor spread out a parchment and opened his inkhorn and sharpened his pen, Peter leaned back with half-closed eyes and recalled to his mind the language in which he had written such things long ago in Narnia's golden age. Right, he said at last, and now if you are ready, Doctor. Dr. Cornelius dipped his pen and waited. Peter dictated as follows. Peter, by the gift of Aslan, by election, by prescription, and by conquest, High King over all kings in Narnia, Emperor of the Lone Islands, and Lord of Cair Paravel, Knight of the Most Noble, Order of the Lion, to Miraz, son of Caspian the Eighth, sometime Lord Protector of Narnia, and now styling himself King of Narnia, greeting. Have you got that? Narnia, greeting, muttered the doctor. Yes, sire. Then begin a new paragraph, said Peter. For to prevent the effusion of blood and for the avoiding all other inconveniences likely to grow from the wars now levied in our realm of Narnia, it is our pleasure to adventure our royal person on behalf of our trusty and well-beloved Caspian in clean wager of battle to prove upon your lordship's body that the said Caspian is lawful king under us in Narnia, both by our gift and by the laws of Telmarines. and your lordship twice guilty of treachery, both in withholding the dominion of Narnia from the said Caspian and in the most abominable. Don't forget to spell it with an H, doctor. And bloody, with an H, doctor, bloody and unnatural murder of your kindly lord and brother King Caspian, ninth of that name, wherever we most heartily provoke, challenge, and defy your lordship to the said combat and monarchy, mono, monomachy, monomachy. I've never seen that word before. Monomachy, monomachy. Oh, just moving on. And have sent these letters by the hand of our well-beloved and royal brother Edmund, sometime king under us in Narnia, Duke of Lantern Waste and Count of the Western March, Knight of the Noble Order of the Table, to whom we have given full power of determining with your lordship all the conditions of the said battle, given at our lodging in Aslan's house this 12th day of the month, green roof in the first year of Caspian, 10th of Narnia. 7-Eleven Lucas, hello. That ought to do, said Peter, drawing a deep breath. And now we must send 2 orders with King Edmund. I think the giant ought to be one. He's not very clever, you know, said Caspian. Of course not, said Peter, but any giant looks impressive if only he will keep quiet, and it will cheer him up. But who for the other? Upon my word, said Trumpkin, if you want someone who can kill with looks, Reepicheep would be the best. He would indeed, from all I hear, said Peter with a laugh, if only he wasn't so small. They wouldn't even see him till he was close. Send Glenstorm, sire, said Truffle Hunter. No one ever laughed at a centaur. An hour later, 2 great lords in the army of Miraz, the Lord Glozzel and the Lord Caspian, strolling along their lines and picking their teeth after breakfast, looked up and saw coming down to them from the wood the centaur and giant Wimbleweather, whom they had seen before in battle, and before them a figure they could not recognize. Nor indeed would the other boys at Edmund's school have recognized him if they could have seen him at that moment, for Aslan had breathed on him at their meeting, and a kind of greatness hung about him. What's to do? Said Lord Glozzel. An attack? A parley, rather, said Caspian. See, they carry green branches. They are coming to surrender, most likely. He that is walking between the centaur and the giant has no look of surrender in his face, said Glozzel. Who can he be? It is not the boy Caspian. Not indeed, said Caspian. This is a fell warrior, I warrant you. Wherever the rebels have got him from, he is, in your lordship's private ear, a kinglier man than ever Miraz was. And what mail he wears! None of our smiths can make the like. I'll wager my dabbled homily he brings a challenge, not a surrender, said Glozzel. How then, said Caspian, we hold the enemy in our fist here. Miraz would never be so harebrained as to throw away his advantage on a combat. He might be brought to it, said Glozzel in a much lower voice. Softly, said Caspian. Step a little aside here and out of earshot of those sentries. Now, have I taken your lordship's meaning all right? If the king undertook wager of battle, whispered Glozzel, why, either he would kill or be killed. So, said Caspian, nodding his head, and if he killed, we should have won this war. Certainly, and if not, yes, that's exactly how it's spelled, Kirk, and thank you. That word means a duel. Very good. This is why we keep you around. This is why you're here, Kirk. This is why you are here. Dottie Crush Fest. Yes. Why would I do anything but? Where did I leave off? Oh gosh. So, said Subspan, nodding his head, and if he killed, we should have won this war, certainly, and if not, we should be able to win it without the king's grace, as with him. For I need not tell your lordship that Miraz is no very great captain, and after that we should both be victorious and kingless. And it is your meaning, my lord, that you and I could hold this land quite as conveniently without a king as with one. You know how to use Google, Kirk? Good for you. You're crushing. Glozzel's face grew ugly. Not forgetting, said he, that it was we who first put him on the throne, and in all the years that he has enjoyed it, what fruits have come our way? What gratitude has he shown us? Say no more, answered Subspian. But look, here comes one to fetch us to the king's tent. When they reached Miraz's tent, they saw Edmund and his two companions seated outside it and being entertained with cakes and wine, having already delivered the challenge, and withdrawn while the king was considering it. When they saw them thus at close quarters, the two Telmarine lords thought all three of them very alarming. Inside, they found Miraz, unarmed and finishing his breakfast. His face was flushed, and there was a scowl on his brow. My smarty pants are in the wash. Oh no. Oh no. Luckily, your Google ability is still with you. Good for you. There, he growled, flinging the parchment across the table to them. See what a pack of nursery tales our jackanapes of a nephew has sent us. It's a jackanape. I mean, is that like a jackalope, but like in an ape form? Hmm. You want to Google that too? A jackanape? By your leave, sire, said Glozzel, if the young warrior who we have just seen outside is the King Edmund mentioned in the writing, then I would not call him a nursery tale, but a very dangerous knight. King Edmund, pah, said Miraz, does your lordship believe those old wives' fables about Peter and Edmund and the rest? I believe my eyes, your majesty, said Glozzel. Well, this is to no purpose, said Miraz, but as touching the challenge, I suppose there is only one opinion between us. I suppose so indeed, sire, said Glozzel. And what is that? asked the king. Most infallibly to refuse it, said Glozzel, for though I have never been called a coward, I must plainly say that to meet that young man in battle is more than my heart would serve me for. And if, as is likely, my brother, the High King, is more dangerous than he, why, on your life, my Lord King, have nothing to do with him. Plague on you, cried Miraz. It was not that sort of counsel I wanted. Do you think I am asking you if I should be afraid to meet this Peter, if there is such a man? Do you think I fear him? I wanted your counsel on the policy of the matter, whether we, having the advantage, should hazard it on a wager battle. Jackanapes, a cheeky or impertinent person. Oh, so it's not an animal. Okay, it's definitely not like a jackalope. So good to know. Look at how much we're learning tonight. Oh, wow, I need to start using these words more. A cheeky or impertinent person. Wow. Can you imagine if you're in a store and someone is talking to you about just like ill vision mask? You're just like, you are such a jackanape. And you just walk away and they're going to be like, what the fuck did she just say to me? Like, It's that insult that now I have to look it up to know if she insulted me. By the time I figure it out, she's gonna be gone. And it's good times. Good times. We need to bring the jackanapes out. Yeah, definitely. To which I can only answer, Your Majesty, said Glosel, that for all reasons the challenge should be refused. There is death in the strange knight's face. There you are again, said Miraz, now thoroughly angry. Are you trying to make it appear that I am a great coward, as your lordship? Your Majesty may say your pleasure, said Glosel sulkily. You talk like an old woman, Glosel, said the king. What do you say, my lord Caspian? Do not touch it, sire, was the reply, and what your Majesty says of the policy of the thing comes in very happily. I give your Majesty excellent grounds for a refusal without any cause for questioning your Majesty's honor or courage. Great heaven! Exclaimed Miraz, jumping to his feet. Are you also bewitched today? Do you think I am looking for grounds to refuse it? You might as well call me a coward to my face. The conversation was going exactly as the two lords wished, so they said nothing. I see what it is, said Miraz, after staring at them as if his eyes would start out of his head. You are as lily-livered as hares yourselves, and have the effrontery to imagine my heart after the likeness of yours. Grounds for a refusal indeed, excuses for not fighting. Are you soldiers? Are you telmarines? Are you men? And if I do refuse it, as all good reasons of captaincy and martial policy urge me to do, you will think and teach others to think I was afraid. Is it not so? No man of your Majesty's age, said Glosel, would be called a coward by any wise soldier for refusing the combat with a great warrior in the flower of his youth. So I'm to be a dotard with one foot in the grave as well as a dastard? Roared Miraz. I'll tell you what it is, my lords, with your womanish counsels ever shying from the true point, which is one of policy. You have done the very opposite of your intent. I had meant to refuse it, but I'll accept it. Do you hear? Accept it. I'll not be ashamed because some witchcraft or treason has frozen both your bloods. The king is quite worked up. It's quite worked up. Got some really good reverse psychology. We beseech your majesty, said Glosel, but Miraz had flung out of the tent, and they could hear him bawling out his acceptance to Edmund. The two lords looked at one another and chuckled quietly. I knew he'd do it if he were properly chafed, said Glosel, but I'll not forget he called me coward. It shall be paid for. There was a great stirring at Aslan's howe when the news came back and was communicated to the various creatures. Edmund, with one of Miraz's captains, had already marked out the place for the combat, and ropes and stakes had been put round it. 2 telmarines were to stand at 2 of the corners, and 1 in the middle of each side, as marshals of the list. 3 marshals for the other 2 corners, and the other side were to be furnished by the High King. Peter was just explaining to Caspian that he could not be won because his right to the throne was what they were fighting about, when suddenly a thick, sleepy voice said, Your Majesty, please. Peter turned, and there stood the eldest of the bulgy bears. If you please, Your Majesty, he said, I'm a bear, I am. Yes, yes, we did. We did, Barbara. You're correct. To be sure, so you are, and a good bear too, I don't doubt, said Peter. Yes, said the bear, but it was always a right of the bears to supply one marshal of the list. Don't let him, whispered Trumpkin to Peter. He's a good creature, but he'll shame us all. He'll go to sleep and he will suck his paws in front of the enemy, too. Why do bears suck their paws? That's funny. See, like a teddy bear. Love it. I can't help that, said Peter, because he's quite right. The bears had that privilege. I can't imagine how it has been remembered all these years, when so many other things have been forgotten. Please, your majesty, said the bear. It is your right, said Peter, and you shall be one of the marshals, but you must remember not to suck your paws. You hear that, Kirk? Don't suck your paws, okay? Of course not, said the bear in a very shocked voice. Wait, you're doing it this minute, bellowed Trumpkin. Look at that bear sucking his paws. So funny. So funny. I love these talking animals. They're so great. The bear whipped his paw out of his mouth and pretended he hadn't heard. Sire, came a shrill voice from near the ground. Ah, Reepicheep, said Peter, after looking up and down and round as people usually did when addressed by the mouse. Your paws. Your paws. Don't suck your paws. I don't know. I don't know why a bear would suck his paws, whether he's a talking bear or not. I mean, maybe he dipped his paw in a honey pot and he had to suck his paws clean. I don't know. I don't know why a bear would suck his paws. That's funny, though. It's funny. Paws. Yeah, paws. What did you think I said? Sire, said Reepicheep, my life is ever at your command, but my honor is my own. Sire, I have among my people the only trumpeter in your majesty's army. I had thought perhaps we might have been sent with the challenge. Sire, my people are grieved. Perhaps if it were your pleasure that I should be marshal of the list, it would content them. A noise not unlike thunder broke out from somewhere overhead at this point, as Giant Wimbleweather burst into one of those not very intelligent laughs to which the nicer sorts of giants are so liable. He checked himself at once and looked as grave as a turnip by the time Reepicheep discovered where the noise came from. I'm afraid it would not do, said Peter very gravely. Some humans are afraid of mice. I had observed it, sire, said Reepicheep. And it would not be quite fair to Miraz, Peter continued, to have in sight anything that might abate the edge of his courage. Your Majesty is the mirror of honor, said the mouse with one of his admirable bows, and on this matter we have but a single mind. I thought I heard someone laughing just now. If anyone present wishes to make me the subject of his wit, I am very much at his service, with my sword, whenever he has leisure. Reepicheep is great. Look at that little mouse, the 3-foot tall mouse. He's awesome. He's in the next book, too. Now I'm trying to think of things that rhyme with paws. Yeah, exactly. It's the mystery of the night, is what Kirk heard besides paws. An awful silence followed this remark, which was broken by Peter saying, Giant Wimbleweather and the bear and the centaur Glenstorm shall be our marshals. The combat will be at 2 hours after noon, dinner at noon precisely. I say, said Edmund as they walked away, I suppose it is all right. I mean, I suppose you can beat him. That's what I'm fighting him to find out, said Peter. What I was thinking doesn't rhyme with pause. All right. All right. I mean, you're not making us want to know less. Give me 1 second. Did you get confused? Next mystery. Exactly. It's the mystery of the night that will never be uncovered. So thanks for that, Kirk. Glad you're here. Chapter 14. How all were very busy. And don't forget to hit that like button. The Rogan's up. Need all the Rogans up I can get. A little before 2 o'clock, Trumpkin and the Badger sat with the rest of the creatures at the wood's edge, looking across at the gleaming line of Mraz's army, which was about 2 arrow shots away. What's his name? With the Rogans up? Or I don't know. I don't know what I said. In between, a square space of level grass had been staked for the combat. At the 2 far corners stood Glazel and Caspian with drawn swords. At the near corners were Giant Wimbleweather and the Bulgy Bear, who, in spite of all their warnings, was sucking his paws and looking, to tell the truth, uncommonly silly. To make up for this, Glenstorm, on the right of the list, stock still, except when he stamped a hind foot occasionally on the turf, looked much more imposing than the Telmarine Baron, who faced him on the left. Peter had just shaken hands with Edmund and the doctor and was now walking down to the combat. It was like the moment before the pistol goes at an important race, but very much worse. The person who keeps texting me, oh, no one of consequence. I don't know. Just a friend. Just a bear. Online friend. Whatever. Yeah. Just a friend. I wish Aslan had turned up before it came to this, said Trumpkin. So do I, said Truffle Hunter, but look behind you. Crows and crockery, muttered the dwarf as soon as he had done so. What are they? Huge people, beautiful people like gods and goddesses and giants, hundreds and thousands of them closing in behind us. What are they? It's the Dryads and Hamadryads and Sylvans, said Truffle Hunter. Aslan has waked them. Friend, right. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Sadly, just friends. Just popular enough to get a message, but not popular enough to be. I literally don't even know what I'm saying. Oh my gosh, I'm not even high right now. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need to be more high. Where's Eric tonight? He's normally here. He asked me last night if I was streaming. I told him no. I told him that I was streaming tonight. I don't know where he is, but whatever. Zulu's probably asleep. That's pretty standard for story time. But I mean, maybe that's a good thing. It's like if you have a voice that like people fall asleep to, that's good, right? Because that means that your voice is enjoyable, like relaxing, not screeching like a harpy. Though I can screech like a harpy too if needed. So just watch yourselves. Watch yourselves. Said the dwarf. That'll be very useful if the enemy try any treachery, but it won't help the High King very much if Mraz proves handier with his sword. The Badger said nothing, for now Peter and Mraz were entering the list from opposite ends, both on foot, both in chain shirts, with helmets and shields. They advanced till they were close together. Both bowed and seemed to speak, but it was impossible to hear what they said. Next moment, the 2 swords flashed in the sunlight. For a second, the clash could be heard, but it was immediately drowned because both armies began shouting like crowds at a football match. Screw football. We need more fights to the death. Man, that's what this world is lacking right now. Fights to the death, just You dishonored my name. Just duel. Duel. Support the results of the duel. It's relaxing to enjoy a story and hang out with cool people. Gonna sleep like a baby tonight. Heck yeah. I slept much better last night than I did the night before last. So, yeah, it's really good. Really good. Really good. Well done, Peter. Oh, well done, shouted Edmund as he saw Miraz reel back a whole pace and a half. Follow it up quick, and Peter did, and for a few seconds it looked as if the fight might be won. But then Miraz pulled himself together, began to make real use of his height and weight. Miraz, Miraz, the king, came the roar of the Telmarines. Caspian and Edmund grew white with sickening anxiety. Peter is taking some dreadful knocks, said Edmund. Hello, said Caspian. What's happening now? I got a picture for you. Looks like quite the battle. Quite a battle. Good times. Both falling apart, said Edmund. A bit blown, I expect. Watch. Now they're beginning again. More scientifically this time, circling round and round, feeling each other's defenses. I'm afraid this Miraz knows his work, muttered the doctor, but hardly had he said this when there was such a clapping and baying and throwing up of hoods among the old Narnians that it was nearly deafening. What was it? What was it? Asked the doctor. My old eyes missed it. The High King has pricked him in the armpit, said Caspian, still clapping, just where the armhole of the hauberk let the point through. First blood. It's looking ugly again now, though, said Edmund. Peter's not using his shield properly. He must be hurt in the left arm. It was only too true. Everyone could see that Peter's shield hung limp. The shouting of the Telmarines redoubled. You've seen more battles than I, said Caspian. Is there any chance now? Precious little, said Edmund. I suppose he might just do it with luck. Oh, why did we let it happen at all? Said Caspian. Suddenly, all the shouting on both sides died down. Edmund was puzzled for a moment. Then he said, Oh, I see they've both agreed to a rest. Come on, Doctor, you and I may be able to do something for the High King. They ran down to the list, and Peter came outside the ropes to meet them, his face red and sweaty, his chest heaving. Is your left arm wounded? Asked Edmund. It's not exactly a wound, Peter said. I got the full weight of his shoulder on my shield, like a load of bricks, and the rim of the shield drove into my wrist. I don't think it's broken, but it might be a sprain. If you could tie it up very tight, I think I could manage. While they were doing this, Edmund asked anxiously, What do you think of him, Peter? Tough, said Peter, very tough. I have a chance if I can keep him on the hop till his weight and short wind come against him in this hot sun, too. To tell the truth, I haven't much chance else. Give my love to everyone at home, Ed. If he gets me, here he comes into the lists again. So long, old chap. Goodbye, doctor. And I say, Ed, say something especially nice to Trumpkin. He's been a brick. Edmund couldn't speak. He walked back with the doctor to his own lines with a sick feeling in his stomach. But the new bout went well. Peter now seemed to be able to make some use of his shield, and he certainly made good use of his feet. He was almost playing Tig with Miraz now, keeping out of range, shifting his ground, making the enemy work. Coward, booed the Telmarines. Why don't you stand up to him? Don't you like it? I thought you'd come to fight, not dance. Yeah. Oh, I do hope you won't listen to them, said Caspian. not he," said Edmund. "You don't know him." Oh, for Miraz had gotten a blow at last on Peter's helmet. Peter staggered, slipped sideways, and fell on one knee. The roar of the Telmarines rose like the noise of the sea. "Now, Miraz!" they yelled. "Now! Quick, quick! Kill him!" But indeed there was no need to egg the usurper on. He was on top of Peter already. Edmund bit his lips till the blood came as the sword flashed down on Peter. It looked as if he would slash his head off. Thank heavens it had glanced down on his right shoulder. The dwarf wrought mail was sound and did not break. "Great Scott!" cried Edmund. "He's up again. Peter, go it! Peter!" "I couldn't see what happened," said the doctor. "How did he do it?" "He grabbed Miraz's arm as it came down," said Trumpkin, dancing with delight. "There's a man for you. Uses his enemy's arm as a ladder. The High King! The High King! Up, old Narnia!" "Look," said Truffle Hunter, "Miraz is angry. It is good." They were certainly at it, hammer and tongs now, such a flurry of blows that it seemed impossible for either not to be killed. As the excitement grew, the shouting almost died away. The spectators were holding their breath. It was most horrible and most magnificent. A great shout arose from the old Narnians. Miraz was down, not struck by Peter, but face downward, having tripped on a tussock. I'm guessing that's a tree root. I don't even know. These chapters are just full of good words for us tonight. Okay. Peter stepped back, waiting for him to rise. "Oh, bother, bother, bother," said Edmund to himself. "Need he be as gentlemanly as that? I suppose he must. Comes of being a knight and a high king. I suppose it is what Aslan would like, but that brute will be up again in a minute, and then—" But that brute never rose. The Lord Glozzel and Caspian had their own plans ready. As soon as they saw their king down, they leaped into the lists, crying, "Treachery, treachery! The Narnian traitor has stabbed him in the back while he lay helpless. To arms, to arms, to arms!" Washington has the worst accents ever. I'm so jealous of people who have good accents. Oh my gosh. On TikTok, I follow this Scottish guy who his followers always like him to say like American terms or whatever in his accent. And so you can make a video replying to someone's comment that they left you. And so I told him that he should say one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. And so he made a video for my comment, and oh my gosh, it was so funny. So funny. Just freaking hilarious. But yeah, like hot Scottish boy. He can say anything, and I'm just like, yeah, I need more of that. That even though you messed up our weird American sayings or whatever, like you just keep saying that. I'm okay with it. Whew. Yeah, a good Southern accent. Oh boy, be still, my heart. Whew. Yeah, Washington. No, like, can I have a more basic white chick accent? New story. Yeah. We've left Narnia and we're going to TikTok now. Peter hardly understood what was happening. He saw two big men running toward him with drawn swords. Then the third Telmarine had leaped over the ropes on his left. "To arms, Narnia! Treachery!" Peter shouted. If all three had set upon him at once, he would have never spoken again. But Glozzel stopped to stab his own king dead where he lay. "That's for your insult this morning," he whispered as the blade went home. Peter swung to face Caspian, slashed his legs from under him, and with the back Back cut of the same stroke walloped off his head. Edmund was now at his side, crying, Narnia, Narnia, the lion! The whole Telmarine army was rushing toward them, but now the giant was stamping forward, stooping low and swinging his club. The centaurs charged, twang, twang behind his hiss, hiss overhead came the archery of dwarfs. Trumpkin was fighting at his left. Full battle was joined. He nailed it. I have a white chick accent. Yep. Washington got basic white chick accents. That's all we get. That's all we get. It's just depressing, right? Come back, Reepicheep, you little ass, shouted Peter. You'll only be killed. This is no place for mice. But the ridiculous little creatures were dancing in and out among the feet of both armies, and jabbing with their swords. Many a Telmarine warrior that day felt his boots suddenly pierced as if by a dozen skewers, hopped on one leg, cursing the pain, and fell as often as not. If he fell, the mice finished him off. If he did not, someone else did. Basic, not basic. I'm a basic bitch. Yeah, I can see that, Kirk. Yeah, basic bitches up in her. But almost before the old Narnians were really warmed to their work, they found the enemy giving way. Tough-looking warriors turned white, gazed in terror not on the old Narnians, but on something behind them, and then flung down their weapons, shrieking, the wood, the end of the world! But soon neither their cries nor the sound of weapons could be heard any more, for both were drowned in the ocean-like roar of the awakened trees as they plunged through the ranks of Peter's army and then on in pursuit of the Telmarines. Have you ever stood at the edge of a great wood on a high ridge when a wild southwester broke over it in full fury on an autumn evening? Imagine that sound. And then imagine that the wood, instead of being fixed to one place, was rushing at you and was no longer trees, but huge people. Yet still like trees, because their long arms waved like branches and their heads tossed and leaves fell round them in showers. It was like that for the Telmarines. It was a little alarming even for the Narnians. Who'd have freaked anyone out if Kirk was actually Kelly and has been catfishing us all? I mean, at this point, nothing would surprise me. Because, I mean, Michelle L. is Ray, so, which I don't know where he is. He says that he gets unsubbed to my channel every week. And so, he said that he resubbed again this week, but he probably got unsubbed yet again. My channel is so weird. I went over 600 subscribers, and then I went back down to 595, and I was sitting there for a while. Now it's dropped down a little bit more, and I don't even know. What do people want from my YouTube channel? What is it going to take to get people to subscribe? I don't even know. Before we start the next book, though, next week, I'm going to set up streaming on multiple platforms at once. So try and branch out to, I already have a DLive channel. I'm going to set up a Twitch one, probably Odyssey, and yeah, and I'm going to stream on multiple platforms, because on DLive you can collect lemons no matter how big your channel is. YouTube, I will probably never be able to monetize my channel. Super unlikely. And then Twitch, I think you can get paid on there as well. So, I mean, if I'm going to do this, spend my time, might as well collect a few pennies if people want to throw pennies at me. So, there. I don't know what it will take, but you shouldn't do it. Well, I mean, I started putting, I was using just, the book title, a picture of the book. as my thumbnails. And this week and last week, I put a picture of myself because I thought, hey, maybe if people are scrolling through and they see a cute girl on the thumbnail, they'd be like, well, I might be down to listen to a story if there's a cute girl. So, and I did get a few more views on the one last week than I normally do. So, I mean, maybe it helped a little bit, but I don't even know. The numbers aren't real. I watched for the first 29 minutes. I said one watching. It just said hi. Went to 4 people. Yeah, it's, I don't know. Gravelers got their tricks. They're always just, always trying to fuck with us. So, whatever. But I can go elsewhere. I mean, I'll still be on YouTube, but I'll just be streaming on multiple platforms at once. So, try and reach a new crowd because apparently YouTube's crowd is just absurd, apparently. Um, where was I? Imagine that sound. Raz's followers. Did I leave in the middle of a paragraph? Is that what my problem is right here? In a few minutes, all Miraz's followers were running down to the great river in the hope of crossing the bridge to the town of Baruna, and there defending themselves behind ramparts and closed gates. They reached the river, but there was no bridge. It had disappeared since yesterday. Then utter panic and horror fell upon them, and they all surrendered. But what happened to the bridge? Early that morning, after a few hours' sleep, the girls had waked to see Aslan standing over them and to hear his voice saying, "We will make holiday." They rubbed their eyes and looked around them. The trees had all gone, but could still be seen moving away toward Aslan's howe in a dark mass. Bacchus and the Maenads, his fierce madcap girls, and Silenus were still with them. Lucy, fully rested, jumped up. Everyone was awake, everyone was laughing, flutes were playing, cymbals were clashing, animals, not talking animals, were crowded in upon them from every direction. "What is it, Aslan?" said Lucy, her eyes dancing and her feet wanting to dance. "Come, children," said he, "ride on my back again today." "Oh, lovely!" cried Lucy, and both girls climbed onto the warm golden back as they had done no one knew how many years before. And then the whole party moved off, Aslan leading, Bacchus and his Maenads leaping, rushing and turning somersaults, the beast frisking round them, and Silenus and his donkey bringing up the rear. They turned a little to the right, raced down a steep hill, and found the long bridge of Verona in front of them. Before they had begun to cross it, however, up out of the water came a great wet, bearded head, larger than a man's, crowned with rushes. It looked at Aslan, and out of its mouth a deep voice came. "Hail, Lord," it said, "loose my chains." "Who on earth is that?" whispered Susan. "I think it's the river god, but hush," said Lucy. "Bacchus," said Aslan, "deliver him from his chains." What is this river god? Never know where to hold it to make it focus. Not. That means the bridge, I expect, thought Lucy, and so it did. Bacchus and his people splashed forward into the shallow water, and a minute later the most curious things began happening. Great strong trunks of ivy came curling up all the piers of the bridge, growing as quickly as a fire grows, wrapping the stones round, splitting, breaking, separating them. The walls of the bridge turned into hedges, gay with hawthorn for a moment, and then disappeared as the whole thing, with a rush and a rumble, collapsed into the swirling water. With much splashing, screaming, and laughter, the revelers waded or swam or danced across the ford. "Hurrah! It's the fort of Verona again now!" cried the girls, and up the bank on the far side and into the town. Everyone in the streets fled before their faces. The first house they came to was a school, a girls' school, where a lot of Narnian girls, with their hair done very tight and ugly tight collars round their necks, and thick, tickly stockings on their legs, were having a history lesson. The sort of history that was taught in Narnia under Miraz's rule was duller than the truest history you ever read, and less true than the most exciting adventure story. Sounds about like white people's history. Like, oh, hey guys, want to learn about your history? Did you know that we raped and pillaged and stole for like basically all time? Yeah, it's great. Great. If you don't attend, Gwendolyn, said the mistress, and stop looking out of the window, I shall have to give you an order mark. But please, Miss Prizzle, began Gwendolyn. Did you hear what I said, Gwendolyn? Asked Miss Prizzle. But please, Miss Prizzle, said Gwendolyn, there's a lion. Take 2 order marks for talking nonsense, said Miss Prizzle, and now a roar interrupted her. Ivy came curling in at the windows of the classroom. The leafy branches arched overhead where the ceiling had been. Miss Prizzle found she was standing on grass in a forest glade. She clutched at her desk to steady herself and found that the desk was a rose bush. Wild people, such as she had never even imagined, were crowding round her. Then she saw the lion, screamed, and fled, and with her fled the class, who were mostly dumpy, prim little girls with fat legs. Gwendolyn hesitated. You'll stay with us, sweetheart, said Aslan. Oh, may I? Thank you, said Gwendolyn. Instantly she joined hands with 2 of the maenads, who whirled her round in a merry dance and helped her take off some of the unnecessary and uncomfortable clothes that she was wearing. Wherever they went, in the little town of Baruna, it was the same. Most of the people fled. A few joined them. When they left the town, they were a larger and merrier company. They swept on across the level fields on the north bank or left bank of the river. At every farm, animals came out to join them. Saddled donkeys who had never known joy grew suddenly young again. Chained dogs broke their chains. Horses kicked their carts to pieces and came trotting along with them, clop, clop, kicking up the mud and whinnying. At a well in a yard, they met a man who was beating a boy. The stick burst into flour in the man's hand. He tried to drop it, but it stuck to his hand. His arm became a branch, his body the trunk of a tree. His feet took root. The boy, who had been crying a moment before, burst out laughing and joined them. Look at that guy. He got turned into a tree. I mean, that'd be kind of like an honor to be a tree. I wish that I could be a maenad or a dryad. Yeah, a dryad is the tree. The tree spirit. That would be wonderful. At a little town halfway to Beaver's Dam, where 2 rivers met, they came to another school, where a tired-looking girl was teaching arithmetic to a number of boys who looked very like pigs. She looked out of the window and saw the divine revelers singing up the street, and a stab of joy went through her heart. Aslan stopped right under the window and looked up at her. Tree of life, yes, exactly. Oh, don't, she said. I'd love to, but I mustn't. I must stick to my work, and the children will be frightened if they saw you. Frightened, said the most pig-like of the boys. Who's she talking to out of the window? Let's tell the inspector she talks to people out of the window when she ought to be teaching us. Punch that kid in his face. Ugh, disgusting. Let's go and see who it is, said another boy, and they all came crowding to the window. But as soon as their mean little faces looked out, Bacchus gave a great cry of, Ewan! Ooey! And the boys all began howling with fright and trampling one another to get out of the door and jumping out of the windows. And it was said afterward, whether truly or not, that those particular little boys were never seen again. And that there was a lot of very fine little pigs in that part of the country which had never been seen there before. Now, dear heart, said Aslan to the mistress, and she jumped down and joined them. At Beaversdam they recrossed the river and came east along the southern bank. They came to a little cottage where a child stood in the doorway crying. Why are you crying, my love? Asked Aslan. The child, who had never seen a picture of a lion, was not afraid of him. Auntie's very ill, she said. She's going to die. Then Aslan went to go in at the door of the cottage, but it was too small for him. So when he had got his head through, he pushed with his shoulders. Lucy and Susan fell off when he did this, and lifted the whole house up, and it fell backward and apart. And there, still in her bed, though the bed was now in the open air, lay a little old woman who looked as if she had dwarf blood in her. She was at death's door, but when she opened her eyes and saw the bright hairy head of the lion staring into her face, she did not scream or faint. She said, "Oh, Aslan, I knew it was true. I've been waiting for this all my life. Have you come to take me away?" "Yes, dearest," said Aslan, "but not the long journey yet." And as he spoke, like the flush creeping along the underside of a cloud at sunrise, the color came to her white face, and her eyes grew bright, and she sat up and said, "Why, I do declare I feel that better. I think I could take a little breakfast this morning." "Here, mother," said Bacchus, dipping a pitcher in the cottage well and handing it to her. But what was in it now was not water, but the richest wine, red as red currant jelly, smooth as oil, strong as beef, warming as tea, cool as dew. I'm not a tree, but I am a stud. Oh, man. Wow. You've done something to our well, said the old woman. That makes a nice change, that does. And she jumped out of bed. Right on me, said Aslan, and added to Susan and Lucy, "You two queens will have to run now." "But we'd like that just as well," said Susan, and off they went again. And so at last, with leaping and dancing, singing, with music and laughter, and roaring and barking and neighing, they all came to the place where Miraz's army stood flinging down their swords and holding up their hands, and Peter's army, still holding their weapons and breathing hard, stood round them with stern and glad faces. And the first thing that happened was that the old woman slipped off Aslan's back and ran across to Caspian, and they embraced one another, for she was his old nurse. All right, y'all ready to finish this out? Chapter 15, Aslan makes a door in the air. Ooh, sounds riveting. At the sight of Aslan, the cheeks of the Telmarine soldiers became the color of cold gravy. Their knees knocked together, and many fell on their faces. They had not believed in lions, and this made their fear greater. Even the red dwarfs, who knew that he came as a friend, stood with open mouths and could not speak. Some of the black dwarfs, who had been of Nicobric's party, began to edge away, but all the talking beasts surged round the lion, with purrs and grunts and squeaks and whinnies of delight, fawning on him with their tails, rubbing against him, touching him reverently with their noses, and going to and fro under his body and between his legs. If you have ever seen a little cat loving a big dog whom it knows and trusts, you will have a pretty good picture of their behavior. Then Peter, leading Caspian, forced his way through the crowd of animals. "I do declare," Southern accent Michael Scott. Oh, "This is Caspian, sir," he said, and Caspian knelt and kissed the lion's paw. "Welcome, Prince," said Aslan. "Do you feel yourself sufficient to take up the kingship of Narnia?" I I don't think I do, sir," said Caspian. "I'm only a kid." "Good," said Aslan. "If you had felt yourself sufficient, it would have been proof that you were not. Therefore, under us and under the High King, you shall be King of Narnia, Lord of Cair Paravel, and Emperor of the Lone Islands, you and your heirs, while your race lasts. For at that moment a curious little procession was approaching. 11 mice, 6 of whom carried between them something on a litter made of branches. But the litter was no bigger than a large atlas. No one has ever seen mice more woebegone than these. They were plastered with mud, some with blood too, and their ears were down and their whiskers drooped and their tails dragged in the grass. And their leader piped on his slender pipe a melancholy tune. On the litter lay what seemed little better than a damp heap of fur, all that was left of Reepicheep. He was still breathing, but more dead than alive, gashed with innumerable wounds, one paw crushed, and where his tail had been, a bandaged stump. Poor Reepicheep, he got beat up. Man. Now, Lucy, said Aslan. Lucy had her diamond bottle out in a moment, though only a drop was needed on each of Reepicheep's wounds. The wounds were so many that there was a long and anxious silence before she had finished, and the Master Mouse sprang from the litter. His hand went at once to his sword hilt, and the other he twirled his whiskers. He bowed. Hail, Aslan, came his shrill voice. I have the honor. But then he suddenly stopped. In fact, the fact was that he still had no tail. Whether Lucy had forgotten it or that her cordial, though it could heal wounds, could not make things grow again, Reepicheep became aware of his loss as he made his bow. Perhaps it altered something in his balance. He looked over his right shoulder. Failing to see his tail, he strained his neck further till he had to turn his shoulders, and his whole body followed. But by that time his hindquarters had turned too and were out of sight. Then he strained his neck, looking over his shoulder again, with the same result. Only after he had turned completely round 3 times did he realize the dreadful truth. I am confounded, said Reepicheep to Aslan. I am completely out of countenance. I must crave your indulgence for appearing in this unseemly fashion. It becomes you very well, small one, said Aslan. All the same, replied Reepicheep, if anything could be done, perhaps your majesty, and here he bowed to Lucy. But what do you want with a tail? Asked Aslan. Sir, said the mouse, I can eat and sleep and die for my king without one, but a tail is the honor and glory of a mouse. I have sometimes wondered, friend, said Aslan, whether you do not think much about your honor. Highest of all kings, said Reepicheep, permit me to remind you that a very small size has been bestowed on us mice, and if we did not guard our dignity, some, who weigh worth by inches, would allow themselves very unsuitable pleasantries at our expense. That is why I have been at some pains to make it known that no one who does not wish to feel his sword as near his heart as I can reach shall talk in my presence about traps or toasted cheese or candles. No, sir, not the tallest fool in Narnia. Here he glared very fiercely up at Wimbleweather, but the giant, who was always a stage behind everyone else, had not yet discovered what was being talked about down at his feet, and so missed the point. Why have your followers all drawn their swords, may I ask? Said Aslan. May it please your high majesty, said the second mouse, whose name was Peepikeek. We are all waiting to cut off our own tails if our chief must go without his. We will not bear the shame of wearing an honor which is denied to the high mouse. Ah, roared Aslan, you have conquered me. You have great hearts, not for the sake of your dignity, Reepicheep, but for the love that is between you and your people, and still more for the kindness your people showed me long ago when you ate away the cords that bound me on the stone table. And it was then, though you have long forgotten it, that you began to be talking mice, and you shall have your tail again. Before Aslan had finished speaking, the new tail was in its place. Then at Aslan's command, Peter bestowed the knighthood of the Order of the Lion on Caspian, and Caspian, as soon as he was knighted, himself bestowed it on Truffle Hunter and Trumpkin, Reepicheep, and made Dr. Cornelius his Lord Chancellor, and confirmed the Bulgy Bear in his hereditary office of Marshal of the Lists, and there was great applause. After this, the Telmarine soldiers, firmly but without taunts or blows, were taken across the ford and all put under lock and key in the town of Baruna and given beef and beer. They made a great fuss about wading in the river, for they all hated and feared running water just as much as they hated and feared woods and animals. But in the end, the nuisance was over, and then the nicest parts of that long day began. Lucy, sitting close to Aslan and divinely comfortable, wondered what the trees were doing. At first, she thought they were merely dancing. They were certainly going round slowly in two circles, one from left to right and the other from right to left. Then she noticed that they kept throwing something down in the center of both circles. Sometimes she thought they were cutting off long strands of their hair. At other times it looked as if they were breaking off bits of their fingers. But if so, they had plenty of fingers to spare and it did not hurt them. But whatever they were throwing down, when it reached the ground, it became brushwood or dry sticks. Then 3 or 4 of the red dwarfs came forward with their tinder boxes and set light to the pile, which first crackled and then blazed and finally roared as a woodland bonfire on midsummer night ought to do, and everyone sat down in a wide circle round it. Then Bacchus and Silenus and the Maenads began a dance, far wilder than the dance of the trees, not merely a dance for fun and beauty, though it was that too, but a magic dance of plenty, and where their hands touched and where their feet fell, the feast came into existence. Sides of roasted meat that filled the grove with delicious smell, and wheaten cakes and oaten cakes, honey and many-colored sugars, and cream as thick as porridge and as smooth as still water, peaches, nectarines, pomegranates, pears, grapes, strawberries, raspberries, pyramids, and cataracts of fruit. Then in great wooden cups and bowls and mazers, wreathed with ivy, came the wines, dark, thick ones like syrups of mulberry juice, and clear red ones like red jellies liquefied, yellow wines, yellow green, and greenish yellow. That's a real party they got going on. Dang, getting hungry. But for the tree people, different fare was provided. When Lucy saw Clodsley's shovel and his moles scuffling up the turf in various places, which Bacchus had pointed out to them, and realized that the trees weren't going to eat earth, it gave her rather a shudder. But when she saw the earth, saw the when but when she saw the earths that were actually brought to them, she felt quite different. They began with a rich brown loam that looked almost exactly like chocolate. So like chocolate, in fact, that Edmund tried a piece of it, but he did not find it at all nice. When the rich loam had taken the edge off their hunger, the trees turned to an earth of the kind you see in Somerset, which is almost pink. They said it was lighter and sweeter. At the cheese stage, they had a chalky soil and then went on to delicate confections of the finest gravels powdered with choice silver sand. They drank very little wine, and it made the Hollies very talkative. For the most part, they quenched their thirst with deep draughts of mingled dew and rain, flavored with forest flowers and the airy taste of the thinnest clouds. Then Aslan feasted the Narnians till long after the sunset had died away and the stars had come out, and the great fire, now hotter but less noisy, shone like a beacon in the dark woods, and the frightened Telmarines saw it from far away and wondered what it might mean. The best thing of all about this feast was that there was no breaking up or going away, but as the talk grew quieter and slower, one after another would begin to nod and finally drop off to sleep, with feet toward the fire, good friends on either side, till at last there was silence all around the circle, and the chattering of water over stone at the fort of Bruna could be heard once more. But all night Aslan and the moon gazed upon each other with joyful and unblinking eyes. Next day, messengers, who were chiefly squirrels and birds, were sent out all over the country with a proclamation to the scattered Telmarines, including, of course, the prisoners in Baruna. They were told that Caspian was now king and that Narnia would henceforth belong to the talking beasts, and the dwarfs and dryads and fauns and other creatures quite as much to the men as to the men. Any who chose to stay under the new conditions might do so, but for those who did not like the idea, Aslan would provide another home. Anyone who wished to go there must come to Aslan and the kings at the fort of Baruna by noon on the 5th day. You may imagine that this caused plenty of head scratching among the Telmarines. Some of them, chiefly the young ones, had, like Caspian, heard stories of the old days and were delighted that they had come back. They were already making friends with the creatures. These all decided to stay in Narnia, but most of the older men, especially those who had been important under Miraz, were sulky and had no wish to live in a country where they could not rule a roost. Live here with a lot of booming, performing animals. No fear, they said. And ghosts, too, some added with a shudder. That's what those dryads really are. It's not canny. They were also suspicious. I don't trust them, they said. Not with all that. Not with that awful lion and all. He won't keep his claws off us long. You'll see. But then they were equally suspicious of his offer to give them a new home. Take us off to his den and eat us one by one, most likely, they muttered. And the more they talked to one another, the sulkier and more suspicious they became. But on the appointed day, more than half of them turned up. At one end of the glade, Aslan had caused to be set up 2 stakes of wood, higher than a man's head and about 3 feet apart. A third and lighter piece of wood was bound across them at the top, uniting them so that the whole thing looked like a doorway from nowhere into nowhere. In front of this stood Aslan himself, with Peter on his right and Caspian on his left. Grouped round them were Susan and Lucy, Trumpkin and Truffle Hunter, the Lord Cornelius, Glenstorm, Reepicheep, and others. The children and the dwarfs made good use of the royal wardrobes in what had been the castle of Miraz and was now the castle of Caspian, and what with silk and cloth of gold and with snowy linen glancing through slashed sleeves, with silver mail shirts and jeweled sword hilts, with gilt helmets and feathered bonnets, they were almost too bright to look at. Even the beasts wore rich chains about their necks. Yet nobody's eyes were on them or the children. The living and strokable gold of Aslan's mane outshone them all. The rest of the old Narnians stood down each side of the glade. At the far end stood the Telmarines. The light shone brightly, and pennants fluttered in the light wind. Men of Telmar, said Aslan, you who seek a new land, hear my words. I will send you all to your own country, which I know and you do not. We don't remember Telmar. We don't know where it is. We don't know what it is like, grumbled the Telmarines. You came into Narnia out of Telmar, said Aslan, but you came into Telmar from another place. You do not belong to this world at all. You came hither certain generations ago out of that same world to which the High King Peter belongs. Not shocking that the terrible people came from our realm here. Shocking. Probably all the people wearing a freaking mask right now. Like, thanks for sending them back, Aslan. We really needed these people. Goodness. It's where all the good men must have gone, or at least most of them. They just stayed in Narnia, and then we got sent the men of Telmar, who aren't even of Telmar. Just wow. Plot really is thick in this book, isn't it? At this, half the Telmarines began whimpering. There you are, told you so. He's going to kill us all, send us right out of the world. And the other half began throwing out their chests and slapping one another on the back and whispering, there you are. Might have guessed we didn't belong to this place with all its queer, nasty, unnatural creatures. We're of royal blood, you see. And even Caspian and Cornelius and the children turned to Aslan with looks of amazement on their faces. Peace, said Aslan in the low voice which was nearest to his growl. The earth seemed to shake a little, and every living thing in the grove became still as stone. You, Sir Caspian, said Aslan, might have known that you could be no true king of Narnia unless, like the kings of old, you were a son of Adam and came from the world of Adam's sons. And so you are. Many years ago in that world, in a deep sea of that world which is called the South Sea, a shipload of pirates was driven by a storm on an island. And there they did as pirates would, killed the natives and took the native women for wives and made palm wine and drank and were drunk and lay in the shade of the palm trees, woke up and quarreled and sometimes killed one another. And in one of these frays, 6 were put to flight by the rest and fled with their women into the center of the island and up a mountain and went, as they thought, into a cave to hide. But it was one of the magical places of that world, one of the chinks or chasms between that world and this. There were many chinks or chasms between worlds in old times, but they have grown rarer. This was one of the last. I do not say the last. And so they fell, or rose, or blundered, or dropped right through, and found themselves in this world, in the land of Telmar, which was then unpeopled. But why it was unpeopled is a long story. I will not tell it now. And in Telmar, their descendants, not allowed back in Narnia after the incident. Funny. Their descendants lived and became a fierce and proud people, and after many generations there was a famine in Telmar, and they invaded Narnia, which was then in some disorder, but that also would be a long story, and conquered it and ruled it. Do you mark all this well, King Caspian? I do indeed, sir, said Caspian. I was wishing that I came of a more honorable lineage. You come of the Lord Adam and the Lady Eve, said Aslan, and that is both honor enough to erect the head of the poorest beggar and shame enough to bow the shoulders of the greatest emperor on earth. Be content. Caspian bowed. And now, said Aslan, you men and women of Telmar, will you go back to that island in the world of men from which your fathers first came? It is no bad place. The race of those pirates who first found it has died out, and it is without inhabitants. There are good wells of fresh water, and a fruitful soil, and timber for building, and fish in the lagoons. And the other men of that world have not yet discovered it. The chasm is open for your return, but this I must warn you that once you have gone through, it will close behind you forever. There will be no more commerce between the worlds by that door. There was silence for a moment. Then a burly, decent-looking fellow among the Telmarine soldiers pushed forward and said, Well, I'll take the offer. It is well chosen, said Aslan, and because you have spoken first, strong magic is upon you. Your future in that world shall be good. Come forth. The man, now a little pale, came forward. Aslan and his court drew aside, leaving him free access to the empty doorway of the stakes. Go through it, my son, said Aslan, bending toward him and touching the man's nose with his own. As soon as the lion's breath came about him, a new look came into the man's eyes, startled but not unhappy, as if he were trying to remember something. Then he squared his shoulders and walked into the door. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him. They saw the 3 pieces of wood, through them the trees and grass and sky of Narnia. They saw the man between the doorposts, then, in 1 second, and he vanished utterly. From the other end of the glade, the remaining Telmarines set up a wailing. Oh, what's happened to him? Do you mean to murder us? We won't go that way. And then one of the clever Telmarines said, We don't see any other world through those sticks. If you want us to believe it, why doesn't one of you go? All your friends are keeping well away from the sticks. Let's just say Tumnus won't be returning my calls. Oh no. Please don't tell me you disrespected Mr. Tumnus. How dare you? How dare you? Instantly. Oh, It's like lost the ability to read. Like, what are these letters on this page? Instantly, Reepicheep stood forward and bowed. If my example can be of service, Aslan, he said, I will take 11 mice through that arch at your bidding, without a moment's delay. Nay, little one, said Aslan, laying his velvety paw ever so lightly on Reepicheep's head. They would do dreadful things to you in that world. They would show you at fairs. It is others who must lead. Yeah, a talking mouse? Yeah, he'd be in the traveling circus with the giant man and uh the bearded lady, and yeah, talking mouse would definitely be on display in the circus. Come on, said Peter suddenly to Edmund and Lucy. Our time's up. What do you mean? Said Edmund. This way, said Susan, who seemed to know all about it. Back into the trees, we've got to change. Change what? Asked Lucy. Our clothes, of course, said Susan. Nice fools we'd look on the platform of an English station in these. But our other things are at Caspian's castle, said Edmund. No, they're not, said Peter, still leading the way into the thickest wood. They're all here. They were brought down in bundles this morning. It's all arranged. What was that what Aslan was talking to you and Susan about this morning? Asked Lucy. Yes, that and other things, said Peter, his face very solemn. I can't tell it to you all. There were things he wanted to say to Sue and me, because we're not coming back to Narnia. Never? Cried Edmund and Lucy in dismay. Oh, you two are, answered Peter. At least from what he said, I'm pretty sure he means you to get back someday, but not Sue and me. He says, we're getting too old. Oh, Peter, said Lucy, what awful bad luck. Can you bear it? Well, I think I can, said Peter. It's all rather different from what I thought. You'll understand when it comes to your last time. But quick, here are our things. Oh, heartbreaking. It was odd and not very nice to take off their royal clothes and to come back into their school things. Not very fresh now. Into that great assembly, one or two of the nastier Telmarines cheered, but the other creatures all cheered and rose up in honor of Peter the High King and Queen Susan of the Horn, King Edmund and Queen Lucy. There were affectionate and, on Lucy's part, tearful farewells with all their old friends, animal kisses and hugs from bulgy bears, and hands wrung by Trumpkin, and a last tickly, whiskerish embrace with Truffle Hunter, and of course Caspian offered the horn back to Susan, and of course Susan told him to keep it. And then wonderfully and terribly it was farewell to Aslan himself. Peter took his place with Susan's hands on his shoulders and Edmund's on hers, Lucy's on his, and the first of the Telmarines on Lucy's. And so, in a long line, they moved forward to the door. After that came a moment which is hard to describe, for the children seemed to be seeing three things at once. One was the mouth of a cave opening into the glaring green and blue of an island in the Pacific, where all the Telmarines would find themselves the moment they were through the door. The second was a glade in Narnia, the faces of dwarfs and beasts, the deep eyes of Aslan, and the white patches on the batter's cheeks. But the third, which rapidly swallowed up the other two, was the gray, gravelly surface of a platform in a country station and a seat with luggage round it, where they were all sitting as if they had never moved from it. Singeman, what's happening? Yeah, I mean, one who never sleeps, I mean, eventually you have to get tired, right? You would think. Sleep is crazy like that. A little flat and dreary for a moment, after all they had been through, but also unexpectedly nice in its own way, what with the familiar railway smell, and the English sky and summer term before them. Well, said Peter, we have had a time. Bother, said Edmund, I've left my new torch in Narnia. And here they are, back on the platform. See that? That. Oh, is that it? Oh, there it is. We've reached the end. What's the end? I don't know why they even put these blank pages in there. What are you doing? And there's a nice map of Narnia. Also the map of Narnia. Oh, and that's the end. The end of Prince Caspian. Ugh. Ever get sad when a good book ends? It's like having to say goodbye to a good friend. Video keeps stopping. Well, I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's your internet. I don't know. Maybe you need an Ethernet cord. The world really may never know. It's still rolling on my phone. So yeah, that's the end of Prince Caspian. The end. So that's actually 2 books that I finished today because I'm reading a different series, and I finished that book that I was reading, The Gauge of the Gargoyle. And now I finished this one with you all. So just like crushing through books today, but I just can't believe that we're all done with our fourth book. Thank you. You like those, my little bear ears? Are they fun? But next week, oh joy, we finally get, oh goodness, my hair got stuck in my glasses. We finally get to start my most favorite book in the series, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Oh my goodness, I am so excited for that book. Oh, it is so good. So good. So excited. So, I will be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. And let me just bring up my chat so I can see who's here. Don't forget to hit the like button. Give me a good Rogan's up there. Share it with your friends. Tell people to come to story time. Tell them. Tell everyone. Maybe I can get back to 600 subscribers. Just maybe. Maybe. If you share, you tell the people, just do it. Make it happen. I don't even know. I don't know what'll even happen if I get back to 600 subscribers. So whatever. It's all good. In the hood, man. But so good night to Barbara Bear, Singeman, Kirk, Sue Finelli, 888 Industries 640015. Definitely a robot. Super robot. No one has a name like that. But even AI are allowed here if they're not talking shit. So it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. Scrolling. We're scrolling 7-Eleven, Lucas. Give me 1 second. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. We have stuff to do. Ba ba ba, blah blah blah. Loading. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we got that. Give me 1 second. Scrolling through the chat. I saw something that I needed to do. Because you get a wrench. Everybody in my chat gets a wrench. Because then you can just sort out your problems with yourselves. But don't be a jerk with your banning. Only ban if people are trying to talk shit about the people or just being like, you know, retarded globe heads and like whatever, you know what to ban people for. I don't know what to tell y'all. Yeah, Zulu One was here. He's probably asleep. That's fine. I understand it. So I'm AI, always incredible. There it is, Kirk. You got it. You're crushing the deep state. Did you know that? That's how it's done. It's how it's done, man. So, let's see. Don't forget to get your salsa at www.imperiosalsa.com. Don't forget to to get the best app in the realm, the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. With the new built-in friend finder, you can find your awakened friends anywhere near you. Your neighbor might be a flat earther and you didn't even know it till you got the app. Best $2.99 you ever spent. And don't forget to get your tickets to Flattoberfest, October 23rd and 24th, Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be such a good time. There's a secret singles mingle. You have to email Karen B to get on that list. And you can get your tickets at flatearthfestivals.com. So do that because it's going to be amazing. It's going to be the biggest party of the year. I will be there. I will be at the singles shindig. It's going to be a good time. So, I think that might be it. If you would like to support me and my channel, give me a Rogan's up. That helps. I mean, if you hate it, giving it a Rogan's down supports it too. Like the algorithms don't care which way your thumb goes. As long as you hit that button, tippity tappity tap tap tap, the like button. And yeah, you can send me a letter or seeds or silver at P.O. Box 1598, Shelton, Washington, 98584. If you like PayPal, that's paypal.me/findingdottie. And if you like Cashapp, that's $Dottiesdomes. I accept whatever you're sending. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Even if it's just like a postcard that you're like, hey, this is really cute. Take this postcard and enjoy it. I will love it. It's all good. It's all good in the hood. So yeah, I think that's it. Next week, 8 p.m. Wednesday night, starting a new book, and we're going to be multi-streaming on multiple platforms. It's going to be exciting. I bet the people are so excited. So yeah, much love. Don't forget the hot sex. And I will see you all on the flat side. So, bye. Much love.